Let's begin with roll call. Braden, would you mind starting?
Yeah, I'm Braden Crapel. I'm one of the City Council liaisons to the Human Rights Commission.
Linda Winkler, Commissioner. Leslie Stambaugh, Commissioner and Chair.
Rick Ratliff, Commissioner.
Pamela Dent, Commissioner.
Muhammad Al-Azam, Commissioner.
Dwight Wilson, Commissioner.
Vivian Chang, Commissioner.
Sumi Kailasapati, Ann Arbor City Council Member, liaison to the Human Rights Commission.
Thank you. We're going to start with public comment. And the first person is Glenn. Excuse me, I should look at the sign-up sheet.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and especially thank you for the service you provide for our community. I'm Glenn Nelson, resident of Ann Arbor. My purpose tonight is to make you aware of what I believe is a looming mistake in the provision of public services in our community and to suggest what each of us needs to do. A majority, not all, but a majority of the Ann Arbor City Council members have indicated their intent to spend $8 million of the revenues from the Mental Health and Public Safety Services millage on a climate action plan completely unrelated to mental health and public safety services. I feel this is a mistake in priorities. I believe the mental health and public safety services at this point in time are a higher priority. I also believe it's a lapse in accountability and transparency in government. I'll give you a little background. The exact title of the bond proposal was Washtenaw County Community Mental Health and Public Safety Preservation Millage. Said nothing about a general fund subsidy to selected jurisdictions. The material distributed by the Yes campaign mentioned only public safety and mental health services. On July 3rd, the day before the 4th of July, the City Council passed a resolution of intent, which is where the climate action intent comes from. The millage passed overwhelmingly in November of last year. Over the 8 years of its life, it will raise approximately $140 million. That's countywide. The city of Ann Arbor has the responsibility to allocate 1/7 of that, which is $20 million. Of that $20 million, the intent resolution says 40% will go to a climate action plan. So that's $8 million over the life of the millage, or approximately $1 million per year. And it is that climate action component I quarrel with, not the bicycle and pedestrian safety, and not the affordable housing. Last Monday night illustrates the hazard to those of us who believe we voted for the mental health and public safety services millage. The council discussed, it's not a done deal yet, moving 2 FTEs from the general fund, and these are recurring FTEs, or it's as permanent as you get in government, from the general fund to the millage. That would free up $165 million. And Crawford then said, this is great because we can now spend $165 million, not million, thousand, I'm sorry, $165,000 on street light maintenance and repair. For those of us who thought we were voting for mental health and public safety services, getting street light maintenance and repair is not what we thought we were getting. That's what we have to watch out for. If you agree with me, those of you who are not on the council, I urge you to contact the city council, urge them to spend the money on mental health and public safety services, and I urge you also to ask them to have an expert advisory board to identify the best places to put a few critical funds and the best way to fund things so they get the Medicaid match, which means in some cases by spending $200,000, we would actually get another $200,000 from Medicaid.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and I have handouts that, should I give them to you and you distribute? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak? No one else? Are there any questions for Glenn? Thank you. Agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Any discussion about the agenda?
I thought we were going to remove the part about the election of officers.
We're going to just talk about the election.
Oh, we are, okay.
But
And also the
we will remove Brad O'Fury.
Brad O'Fury, right,
Yes,
yeah.
he's not going to be here today.
What did you say? Oh, the young man.
Yes, yes. Anything else? The other thing I would like to do after the agenda is to just spend a few minutes to introduce our new commissioner. But for the agenda, do we have a motion to accept the agenda?
I move we accept the agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have a new commissioner, and I was fortunate enough to have coffee with him yesterday, and I'm very excited about it. Mohammed Al-Azam, would you please say a few words about yourself and give us just a quick overview about who you are and why you wanted to be on this commission?
My profession is medical. I am medical doctor, radiologist. I practiced in Michigan for more than 35, 36 years. Before that, I practiced 12 years in Wisconsin. I'm a member of the Muslim Community Association on Plymouth Road, and really the president of the MCA asked me a couple months ago if I'll be interested to serve. Dr. Shalaby is done, I think, in the end of last year, and the mayor apparently asked Dr. Habib, our president, if there is another person like to fill the slot or the position. And I have some background. Originally, I am from Syria, from Middle East, and maybe some of you aware of the situation in Syria for the last 7 years with the revolution. We call it here civil war. And I knew that the government, if you do not watch it carefully, they can get away with many things. Hopefully, we'll never reach the situation which came to my original country in Syria. So from that, perspective, I think that I like to help out to serve in this capacity in the human resources and human defense and right for the less advantaged people in the community.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think all very happy to have you on board. Thank you.
you.
Rick Radcliffe has arranged for a presentation. Rick, you want to introduce it?
Yes, I would like to introduce everyone to William Lopez. He's a PhD in public health and a postdoctoral fellow at the U of M School of Public Health. His work focuses on the impact of immigration enforcement on immigrant communities, especially those in Washtenaw County. And he's here as the volunteer organizer for the Washtenaw Interfaith Coalition for Immigrant Rights. And we hope to hear about it from you. So, welcome.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Radcliffe. And thank you to the Ann Arbor Human Rights Commission for having me today to speak about the Washtenaw Interfaith Coalition for Immigrant Rights. As Mr. Radcliffe said, my name is Dr. William Lopez. I'm a postdoc fellow at the University of Michigan School of Public Health, and I volunteer and organize with the Washtenaw Interfaith Coalition for Immigrant Rights. So I've been volunteering with Wicker for about 5 years, and I did my doctoral research collaborating with Wicker as well. So I've had a very good opportunity to see how this organization works and to see the powerful role it plays in our Washtenaw County community. Wicker started in about 2008 after an immigration raid, a violent immigration raid on a mobile home community in which one of the founders was in the raided mobile home. Many men were deported that day, and many families were left without their, with breadwinners, many children without their fathers. From there, 4 founders of Wicker met in the church and with the community, and it was thus that Wicker was born, with the goal of preparing the community for immigration enforcement and for mitigating the damage that follows this enforcement. Wicker is currently divided into about four parts. We call it the Wicker Diamond. We provide urgent response, in which we operate an urgent response phone in which members of the community can call Wicker if there's an emergency related to immigration, and immigration emergencies broadly defined. So we've also seen these emergencies change throughout the past 5-8 years. Many folks originally at the start of Wicker were being detained. There was a shift with the implementation of DACA to undocumented folks needing help with college applications, which was a wonderful shift. And then we see again another turn to folks being removed from our communities. The urgent response team also operates a teen group. And this teen group originally started as well because many teens were dealing with the removal or the pending removal of their parents. And we can imagine, especially those of us who are parents, what it's like to expect our children to go to school, to do their work, to get an education, while their parents are detained and waiting to be deported. The teen group is still going strong, and the teen group is run by our one paid staff member who's a social worker, with the rest of Wicker being volunteers. Wicker also engages in education. 2 basic parts of that education are ally education, in which we work with folks who are not undocumented themselves or may not have connections to mixed status or immigrant communities. And we also do Know Your Rights trainings. These trainings educate folks about their rights in a variety of roles. For example, as kitchen staff, as workers, as managers, and as individuals who may be pulled over on the sidewalk or in cars. Wicker also engages in political action. We say we think globally and act locally. Many of this has become campaigns to end or to stop the deportation of some of our community members, and many of you have seen a number of these campaigns, including one for a woman named Lourdes. There was the past few months. And again, when these campaigns are often over parents and children engage in the campaigning as well. We've collaborated with the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office, with universities, with sanctuary church organizations. We collaborate closely with the University of Michigan. I've done work on behalf of both U of M and Wicker, and I've seen the benefits of this collaborative academic relationship. Wicker and U of M have produced the only 2 pieces academic pieces that focus on the outcome of immigration home raids. And lastly, Wicker engages in community organization. We engage with undocumented mixed status communities. We prepare for advisory community events, and we engage in fundraising to support all of these causes. So just to think about how this has changed over the course of the past, from one president to the next, what we've seen under President Obama, make no mistake, was a record number of deportations. What we see under President Trump is a record number of arrests. So what's changed is the people who are arrested. Obama had the Priority Enforcement Program, or PEP, in which primary targets of immigration enforcement were recent arrivals or those with certain criminal convictions. Under President Trump, it's all 11 million undocumented immigrants who are targets for removal. Thus, we see many people who are not formally part of the immigration enforcement system being swept up into this system. Currently, we've taken about 750 calls, emergency calls over the past since 2008 for emergencies related to immigration. Yes, so that's a description of Wicker and some of the work Wicker's done, so I'm happy to take any questions the committee may have.
We have questions.
Which of the local universities have been most helpful to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So largely, Wicker was founded by some collaborators in the University of Michigan, and Wicker's continued to benefit from collaboration with University of Michigan. So largely, historically, also because of the location in Ann Arbor, most collaboration has been with University of Michigan, though we're open and have engaged with collaboration with other universities as well.
You mentioned collaboration with the Washtenaw Sheriff's Department.
Yeah.
Was that in any way awkward? I mean, since they're under a sort of a different set of priorities than your organization.
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. So the collaboration with the Washtenaw County Sheriff's Office has been fruitful. One of the products of that has been the Washtenaw ID, which I believe folks are aware of. So the Washtenaw ID is an ID available to folks throughout Washtenaw County because they live in our county, because we live in our county, right? So this is regardless of a number of factors, including immigration status, homelessness, incarceration history, or gender identity. And the sheriff has supported this. And the belief is, with access to an ID, folks can gain access to the services they need, right, to stay happy and to stay healthy, because so many services just are restricted if you don't have an ID. So that's an example of one of the products that came through collaboration with the sheriff. And you also suggested the sheriff's office may have opposing goals to Wicker, but the sheriff has been very clear that he does not enforce immigration law, and he's taken a stand on that. And we see other counties doing that. One of the ways in which many undocumented folks get swept into the immigration system is by coming in contact with police. When they're detained in the county jail, the jail sends their thumbprints to ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. ICE can request a detainer, meaning the jail will hold them for 48 hours or longer so that ICE can arrest them. But without a warrant, county jails are not legally mandated to hold folks, so many counties have been saying we will not hold folks without warrants. And our sheriff has done this. So it's actually been, he's been an example, I think, in the Midwest and elsewhere. Sure.
Following up on that, how about the City of Ann Arbor and the Ann Arbor Police? Are there things that they have done or haven't done that you wish they had done?
I think this is a great question. I think what we're seeing now, so I come from Texas, and we see discussions in many border communities. We actually have Border Patrol or ICE and roadblocks throughout streets. We don't have that as much here because we're in the Midwest. We're away from an international border, though I will say we're close to Canada, so some rules are a bit different. But by and large, we don't have ICE and Border Patrol on the street. Thus, many folks who get arrested and go into the immigration system are coming through police. But here in Washtenaw County, generally speaking, multiple police departments have said we do not enforce immigration law, and we're not asking about immigration status when we pull folks over. Of course, there's a difference between what happens when police are on the road, when folks are deciding, when individual officers are deciding who to pull over, and the rules and the policies of the chief. So we always hope and try to maintain the best relationships with the chiefs we can, and we gather as much information as we can about who is pulled over when and when these folks may end up in the immigration system. Part of the confusion is that different departments have different policies regarding enforcement of immigration, collaborating with ICE, asking for IDs of folks in the car, etc. So Washtenaw County has many departments, and departments that don't have their own police departments have the sheriff's office. Right. So we end up with this patchwork of organizations. Often folks will be pulled over, and like many of us, they don't know which department pulled them over. So it's very hard often to figure, to see who's accountable for any arrest that may end up in ICE custody.
Just to clarify.
Sure.
Does Ann Arbor Police have a specific policy on immigration enforcement?
So Ann Arbor, I wish I remembered all the police departments that have made this statement. It's something I can look up as well. But generally, no, Ann Arbor does not ask about immigration status.
Also, you said that you had one staff member, a social worker. Do you have volunteer attorneys on staff? Do you give legal advice?
That's a great question. So we don't have, so the rest of Wicker is volunteers. We don't have volunteer attorneys, so we refer to attorneys that we know, that we've trusted, and that clients have worked with in the past. Though I will say, Washtenaw County commissioners have given funds for a staff attorney in Washtenaw County for low cost or free legal support, and it's been game-changing for many folks. So it's been excellent. They also started the Barrier Busters program, which is a program more open to providing funds. Often there's sources for funds for specific needs, but sometimes what happens after these detainments, simple things like I can't pay my electric bills. A father was detained and his daughter won't be able to finish college because of tuition or something of the sort. You know, the challenges of real life that may happen when a parent is removed. And Barrier Busters has allowed us to request money to support immigrant families in these situations. Sure.
Can you tell us how frequently ICE comes to raid, or I know they're out looking and they're
Sure. So this is another very good question, and it's hard because ICE works best when no one knows when they're here and when no one knows the frequency with which they come, right? So by and large, we can't say how often they're here or how often they're in our communities. We've seen them. We see them. We saw them drive through campus a couple months ago. We see them throughout, largely in Ypsilanti, but we also saw them, for example, the raid at Savas. So we've seen them here closer to downtown Central Ann Arbor as well. Unfortunately, no, I don't know the frequency with which folks are getting detained specifically by ICE. We know it's frequent. We know times when we're getting emergency calls to the urgent response line. Sometimes we'll get one a week. Other times we'll get, 4 or 5 in the span of 2 days. So it's also very, very unpredictable, which makes it challenging to staff volunteers, but also, again, this is how ICE functions best when we don't know when they're in our communities.
Right. Do you have any sense of how many people from Ann Arbor have been deported?
No, I don't. So generally speaking, we don't have city-level data. We may have county-level data, but as far as folks getting removed from local county jails, it'll need to be a bit bigger than Washtenaw County. I believe there's statistics for Detroit. But generally, the other thing that ends up happening in immigration enforcement, immigration-related work, it's an individual who is undocumented is often connected to other folks who are undocumented. So often it's not talked about. Folks will disappear and their family may know, but often it's not discussed. The data is hard to get for many, often very well justified reasons.
So this is a situation where people are disappearing.
Yes, we often deal with family members who call and say, I don't know where somebody is, and we make an effort to track them down. And usually, eventually, we can be successful in tracking folks down, either if they've been detained by ICE or if we find them in a local jail. It's possible to track folks down, but often, yes, they'll just disappear and need some help locating their fellow community members.
And what about so their families may not know, their children may not know?
That's right.
And their children may not have anybody to go to. Is that?
That is correct. So children may lose parents. Yes, that is correct as well.
I know it's difficult to generalize about what people think, but do you get the feeling that there is a widespread sense in the immigrant community that they're being persecuted by the federal government?
I think that's a good question. So yes, I would say generally, it is hard to generalize, but I will say I can think kind of in my local community and then nationwide. And I would certainly say there is this growing feeling of persecution. And I would say it's very well justified. I mean, the presidential platform was on the removal of undocumented folks. The president did not reinstate DACA, which prior to President Trump, DACA, Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, which supported many young undocumented folks who were generally speaking in college or getting their education. It was just politically challenging to get rid of DACA, right? Nobody really wanted to do it, but since President Trump came into office, DACA was gone, priority enforcement was gone. He's casting a very wide net, and many people are getting caught in it. Yes, in our particular community, I would say the sentiment is probably the same. Again, I don't know the number of deportations, and again, President Trump hasn't been president for very long, so it's unclear yet the number of deportations, but we know the number of arrests is higher. Yeah. And again, because the net is much wider, right?
What's the makeup of the immigrant populations you serve? Is it, in this area, is it mostly Latinx? Is it Chaldean? Is it Chinese? What does that look like?
Sure, so this is, in Washtenaw County, it's mostly Latino and Latina, Mexico, Central America. But that's also a function of who we have that in the foundation of Wicker. We have Spanish speakers, a lot of our organizers and volunteers are Spanish speakers, so thus we tend to pull from that population to reach our services.
Is there anything that you can think of that we can do?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So one, I do thank the county for the barrier busters and for the money they've given to support the lawyer, the staff attorney. And any support you can give the county for either of those is excellent. Getting a Washtenaw County ID is also excellent. So what we see and what we've seen nationwide is we had this influx of local IDs for folks, and again, from a range of groups, whether it's undocumented, formerly incarcerated, homeless, transgender, et cetera, who needed IDs. So communities have tried to address this by having these community IDs. Now what's happening is at the local level, there's this fear that the database of ID applicants could be persecuted because the government will consider that the ID applicant pool as persecutable in a particular way, right? Perhaps for immigration status. So what we want this ID to be is an ID, as was its purpose, for everyone in the county. So the more folks who apply, the better it is for everyone, especially, even whether you have a driver's license already, an ID already, it's great just to show that we're united as Washtenaw County residents.
How about the emergency call? Is that
Sure.
something that you want to publicize to people?
Sure. Well, we can discuss it after. I can share the phone number and some more information afterwards as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you partner with other entities outside of this area, like in Detroit or sister cities those cities that may have indicated that they will become or are currently sanctuary cities?
Yeah. So in Washtenaw County, we partner with Wicker Partners with whoever we can. So the work it's so much to do, and we need plenty of people to do it. So whenever we can collaborate, we certainly do. And we tend to focus on our county, though we do know folks in other counties, and if we hear of a problem in another, we'll refer to them. But we don't necessarily collaborate beyond our county. Though we have worked with other folks who are engaging in their own local community IDs, we have collaborated to organize and think through how best to promote those programs as well. Regarding sanctuary churches, sanctuary policy, so Washtenaw County Sanctuary Group, again, works within Washtenaw County, and we may speak informally to other organizations, but largely collaboration stays within the county. And it's just a matter of demand and capacity, really.
How many sanctuary congregations do you have now?
That's a good question. I don't know. So that's not the part of Wicker that I work with, but I can't estimate, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. I know ours was the second, and so I just wondered if any other.
Yours was the second, you said?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah. How many? 4? It sounds.
4? Yeah, somewhere around 4. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Dr. Lopez, thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes this time. February minutes, let's do that first. That was for the February 7th meeting. Does anybody need a copy?
I sent around some suggested changes. I don't know if people had a chance to see them.
Yeah.
I can go through them each if you want, or not.
Does anybody want to go through them individually, or have you had a chance to look at them and are comfortable? Is there any discussion on these changes?
Well, I saw that Linda had a number of things, but I didn't get a chance to read those.
Okay, I'll just
When
go
they
through
came
them
in.
Okay.
quickly. So 3A, I think that Pam Kish, when she came to speak to us, noted that the Fair Housing Center had actually changed their name
Yes.
from the Fair Housing Center of Southeastern Michigan to Fair Housing Center of Southeast and Mid-Michigan. So that needs to be changed both in the heading and in the body of it. You know, the changes I made were mostly just either grammatical or capitalization kinds of things. So I'll just read you what I wrote in that section. Pam Kish of the Fair Housing Center of Southeast and Mid-Michigan presented information about the background, work, and services of the center in the 8 counties they serve. I think that's the only change there. On the next page, under Brad O'Fury, Mr. O'Fury didn't come because he didn't realize we had changed the date of our meeting, so we might just want to say under there rescheduled or something, because it makes it seem as though he didn't show up when it was not his fault. So I would just propose we write something like rescheduled under there.
Yeah.
Let's see. I wanted to note that under 4B, where it says that the hate crime resolution that we passed will be added to the website, I checked and it hasn't been added to the website yet. So I don't know if...
Heather just told me that she was going
Oh,
to
that
check
she's
and
going
make
to
sure
do
it was
that,
going to get
okay.
up there. Thank you for checking.
No problem. And then, let's see. Under finalized questionnaire vote, what that is, under old business B, the second part of B, it currently says been nominated to the task force. A questionnaire would be sent to people who are nominated, but some of those people are nominated, some of them volunteered. So I just changed it to the commission discussed finalizing the questionnaire that will be distributed to the people who have expressed interest in serving on the task force. And then I got rid of in order to find out more information about their interest. And then I have the commission updated the questionnaire and discussed the process by which the questionnaire will be handled. Then under C, just below that, again, it's just for ease of reading. I changed it to read, the commission also discussed forming a subcommittee to do a first round of reviews of the questionnaires, and then a separate sentence, the subcommittee would meet before the special meeting. And I think that's it.
Any comments, discussion?
There's one correction under public comment. The spelling of the second presenter is incorrect.
Oh, yes, thank you. Okay. Anything else? Can we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have a second, because we had a special meeting on February 28th. We have a second brief set of minutes.
Now, having been absent from that meeting since I was out of state, I probably should not say anything. However, when somebody is absent, we have a line that we say, prevent it from coming. And absence, to me, feels more like which I'm not looking for the word disrespect, but cutting. And as an old dean, I don't like cut. I don't like cuts.
I think this is a standard
It's standard
city
procedure.
clerk thing, but I will check.
Okay, so it's been registered that I,
Thank you.
yeah.
You see that I have some blanks here because I didn't take good notes. And does anybody remember who motioned and who seconded? Two actions. Not at all.
No, I mean,
I
one
can-
of us could go through the tape.
One of us could, and I suppose one of us
Or you could
will.
ask Heather too if she has time.
That's right. Okay.
Also, it says that we looked at 25 applications. Technically, didn't we sort of have a list of 26?
Yes, but one of them was not there.
Yeah, but then we also say that we identified 15, but that 15 one
Oh, we
also wasn't
identified
there
14.
then. Yeah,
You're right.
so.
Thank you. And we have an opportunity to identify the 15th today. Anything else? After one of us goes through and identifies the people, where there are 4 blanks here for people's names, can we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve these minutes.
With that change when
Yeah.
it comes. Anybody want to second it?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. This is, we've had a very, very busy year, and we have a few things that we're supposed to do at the beginning of every year. One of them is to update our conflict of interest form, and I'm going to send those to you, just so that you could look at it, and if you've joined another group or somehow, have different work responsibilities or possible conflicts of interest, please register them. And then I will send a summary out. We also are supposed to re-nominate and elect officers. We were going to do it last month, and David wasn't here. I was going to do it this month, and I wasn't there in last month, and David's not here this month. But next month, let's try to do this. And I think that's, any other thoughts about beginning of the year? We have some other things that will come up later in our meeting about beginning of the year tasks as well, but not administrative. These are administrative issues. Status of complaints. Pam, you want to start with that? I think you have some information.
Yes, I'm still waiting the outcome of the very old complaint involving the individual who presents with a disability. I contacted MDCR in reference to that, and they are going to follow up with contacting the complaining party. Based on the information that I communicated to them that individual shared with the commission, there seems to be some indication that perhaps the allegations of the person with the disability may have merit. In that, there may be an obligation on the part of the responding party, in this case, a nail salon, to accommodate the individual in the wheelchair who requested service for a pedicure. Interestingly enough, the salon underwent a renovation, and they have pictures of that out there on the internet. Unfortunately, in that now completed renovation, it does not lend itself to accommodate individuals in wheelchairs, even though they received approval for the finished work. And So it's at this point being looked at by the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. And once I receive additional information, then I will update us then. There was a second complaint that was received initially through Heather, our HR liaison to the commission. And the individual stated that they were contacting the commission to request assistance on behalf of their spouse, whom they alleged had been treated badly. Based on the circumstances that that individual indicated, I referred them to the Michigan Department of Civil Rights for a couple of reasons. The individual was alleging that the disparate treatment was for the spouse and not themselves. And then they indicated that the spouse subsequently was transferred to another county. And then they stated that they were being denied access to that spouse. It just seemed to be very convoluted, and I didn't believe that we would certainly not even retain jurisdiction if we did look into it further.
Right.
But based on my knowledge of our ordinance and the law as it relates to civil rights, it appeared to be very complicated, and I felt it could be better served by the agencies rather than, we would end up consulting with someone and/or referring it on anyway.
Yeah.
So rather than getting involved initially and being an intermediary, you know, it just struck me as being very pertinent for us to refer that on.
Our
And then-
jurisdiction is just the city of Ann Arbor.
It is, and because this individual was speaking, they stated on behalf of the spouse, it took it out of our jurisdiction anyway, but unless the spouse gave the individual permission to act on their behalf, we couldn't have addressed that anyway, and this person alleged that the spouse wasn't available to even contact. So just making us aware that the complaint did come in. The individual initially contacted Heather, and I bring that up because there's a couple of other complaints that are unfortunately coming through Heather, and what she indicated is her direct line is similar to the commission's telephone number. So she believed that perhaps they were transposing the numbers, which is why she received the complaints initially. She always makes us aware of the complaints, and, you know,
That's very, yes.
but it's the first
seems
time.
unlikely, doesn't it?
It does, but it's the first time that it's occurred since, and we've had the number, you know,
Yeah,
for
we have.
several years. At any
Anything
rate,
could happen.
that's how that particular complaint came in, and I know that there was another one, but I believe Linda's going to speak to that.
Yeah, and just from a procedural point of view, when something comes in, the subcommittee confers and we decide what to do with them, which, and the latest request that came in via the city clerk, we discussed it and responded, and it hasn't come to us as any kind of official complaint yet for us to act on. Yeah.
Yeah, so we act only when there is something that is filed with us.
And there were no additional complaints via the phone line.
Yeah, okay, okay. So we're moving along here. I was going to get the flyers out, by the way. Remember the flyers to remind people where to go and how to file a complaint? Because I know Mohammed wants some to post, and I suspect we all want some.
Well, remember, it's available on our website. The
That's right.
flyer can be printed out if you go to the Ann Arbor Human Rights Commission website. It's I think, maybe the second document under our work, that can be printed out and hung up. It's in color.
Also in Arabic?
Oh, is the
I also,
Arabic one
there
there?
is also one in Arabic. and
Well,
I-
we should put it on our website.
We should,
Okay.
but I'll make sure that you get some,
Right.
and I will bring it next week. I had it out and I just didn't, but, because that reminds me, when people start calling, I understand why this person called the clerk, that made sense. But if they're not calling us, they should know about the Human Rights Commission and our website, where we have an application. I guess we could move on to ban the box. Or were there any questions, by the way, about the complaints? Okay. Ban the box.
Ban the box. I asked Leslie to put it back on because we had raised it earlier in the year about whether we should try to pursue extending the, banning the box that asks for any indication of a criminal record on the initial application, employment application that employers have. Many states and cities have done away with that box, including Ann Arbor. But
And the box asks about,
criminal records. So the idea is that by not putting that question on the initial job application, you're not immediately removing people from consideration who should be considered because their criminal records may have nothing at all to do with the job or their ability to do the job. But it turns out that, I just want to put a couple things on the record here. Although 30 states, not including Michigan, and over 150 cities, including Ann Arbor, have adopted ban the box for their own city or state employees, and 10 states, not including Michigan, and 17 cities, not including Ann Arbor, and some counties have extended those same kinds, the ban the box, to private employers and city contractors in some cases. Our fair state of Michigan, it turns out in 2015, in something called the Local Government Labor Regulatory Limitation Act, said that a local governmental body shall not adopt, enforce, or administer an ordinance, local policy, or local resolution regulating information an employer or potential employer must request, require, or exclude on an application for employment, which means we can't do anything about it. So even if we wanted to request that the city extend ban the box to its city contractors or other private employers in the city, we are effectively barred by state law from doing that. So much for that idea. I just wanted to, as a follow-up, to let you know that.
Have we gotten any response from where the ACLU stands on that?
I imagine I thought that they had some kind of document supporting banning the box, but if our state says that cities can't enact any kind of.
So there has been no move to change the law?
If anything, the opposite. This is how I realized it. I heard something on the news. Within the last week, not only did they double down on that, but they extended it to say that no city can regulate what an employer asks an applicant in the interview, as well as on the job application. So they took the existing law and they expanded it to say that to make it clear that cities cannot regulate how an employer manages its hiring process. So.
I think all of us realize that question is there initially. Many people will not be interviewed.
Right.
Some years ago, I discovered that we had to ask everybody on our staff whether or not they had a felony. And there were 2 people who did. Mm-hmm. I called both of them in and they explained how they had gotten it. And I was given the option by the board of either letting them go or keeping them. I kept them both. One of them had accepted a welfare check 1 month beyond the time she was supposed to. Mm-hmm. And she had no support other than herself. And the other one, at 15 years old, his boss had been busted dealing drugs, and he had delivered something without knowing what was in the package. That's according to what he told me. And the board made it clear that if they screwed up again, it was going to be on my record. But I still kept them. But there is no shot I would have interviewed them if I had seen it beforehand.
Right.
No shot.
Right, and I will say that, you know, some large employers are voluntarily getting rid of it. It doesn't necessarily require city or state regulation, but the EEOC certainly recommends, has very clear guidelines about removing the box and other things that employers should do. And I was thinking for a while, well, maybe we could still pass a resolution encouraging local employers to follow those EEOC guidelines. But if you're really going to follow the letter of the state law, it says that no local resolutions even are permitted. And so, you know.
But what we could do, I mean, we can't file legislation, and the city of Ann Arbor has for the city itself. But we can't. We thought about it years ago and wanted to see how the Ann Arbor's resolution is working, and I think we asked Nancy, and they've had no problems. But we could educate. We could post things that educate what
Yes,
the advantage of not
The
not
EEOC
having.
guidelines, they're very clear. Where we do it, we could put them, we could certainly add them to our website, if nothing else. How you call employers' attention to them, I'm not sure.
We could do that. Be aware that banning the box doesn't mean you can't ever ask the people.
Right,
But this
it's
gives you a
just-
chance to
right.
interview them first and get to know them, and by the time you ask, you're already interested.
Right.
And with the check mark or the
Right.
stipulation right on, on the front of their application, people won't look, you're right.
I kept those two that I referred to because they've been doing good work for years.
Right.
The reason I would not have interviewed them is because if I had 25 to 50 candidates for each spot,
Sure.
I'm not going to interview everybody, and they automatically would have been crossed out.
Right.
So what it would have done to their lives, I can't answer that question.
There was, I believe, two, I'll call them bills, that the Michigan legislature was considering in
That's-
reference to
This
this.
is part
That's
of
what I
this.
was reading from.
So what you've reported today is an update to that?
So it turns out that the bills they're considering were expanding law that was actually passed in 2015 that we weren't aware of, that already banned us from regulating what private employers do in their hiring process. It just expands it to the interview process from the employment application. So when we first raised this again, we deserve a little bit of credit for encouraging the city to remove the box from its applications. That was before 2015, before this was even at the state level. But since then, the state has, in fact, enacted a law banning cities from regulating this.
Well, what's interesting about that, as I was just reviewing an article that was written, I'm not sure by whom, it reports that the city of Detroit has enacted legislation that says they will not engage in that practice of asking applicants if they have sustained a conviction. And they strongly encourage those who do business with the city of Detroit, including contractors, to engage in the same. Our city has enacted legislation that is contrary to the state, and I'm specifically referring to the language I believe that this city council has stated they will adhere to, even though it is contrary to law, which says that they have changed the requirement for the purchasing of cigarettes so that those who, I think state law says 21. City of Ann Arbor has said 18.
No, it's the other way around.
Or it's the other way around, okay. So Since we've already gone on record being unique in that regard, I would like to propose that we encourage our council to do the same as it relates to ban the box, because it's in the interest of the citizenry. And who better than the Human Rights Commission to lead that effort? Especially because we're trying to be in harmony with not only the EEOC, which ultimately will take complaints as it relates to this, but we just want to ensure that everyone has the same equal access.
Yeah.
And I think that this is important enough that we can go on record saying that we want to be directly instrumental in that endeavor. And I know that we have council liaisons on the commission, as well as a council member who is in the audience this evening. So I'm simply proposing that, notwithstanding what you've shared, Linda, but I think that I would like to go on record saying that we do everything in our power to effect the requisite change that I believe is necessary that benefits the citizenry.
Okay. Well, let's talk more about this. It sounds like,
that's
are
fine. I
people
just wanted
interested
to
in
raise
doing
it
something
again.
proactive about this
Yeah.
without
I
violating the
support-
law?
I support a position.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like there are a lot of possibilities, and we may talk about it. Just so you know, a little bit of background, the excuse that the Republicans in the legislature are using is that they don't want, they've seen what cities like San Francisco and Philadelphia are doing to make burdensome regulation of business. And there's another group who would like to use change local applications to ban asking people about former salaries.
Right,
And other.
that was one of the reasons
Yes.
for the interview process changes that they just made.
And that affects women especially, who already have low salaries, and then will have to report that they've had these low salaries, and it just perpetuates that problem. So this is a fairly serious problem, but there may be ways to get around
Now,
it.
the other thing to do is to make sure you vote in November.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Okay. Let's ban the box.
So, wait, are we taking some action on that? Are we sending that to council? I think Pam's made a very interesting proposal.
Well, if somebody wants to draw up a resolution that, Graydon whispered, we could draw up a resolution, as a sort of an advisory thing, and I'm
Why
pretty
would we
confident the
necessarily-
council will not enact anything requiring private employers or city contractors to follow this, because under the law, they can't. But we can go on record through a resolution, if we were to correctly, supporting at least the application of the EEOC guidelines to the behavior of employers and the hiring process in Ann Arbor and city contractors too.
If we drafted a resolution, would that be something that city council would then discuss, or?
It could be. I mean, I would, again, it would be something, I think, discussion even to have with the mayor draw up. I think if you choose the language, then there's not going to be, you're not going to put yourself in any trouble or create problems. It can be all acceptable. And it can be language that then the council could even pass as a recommendation, or, we would like, in some ways that, I don't want to say tiptoes around the law, but doesn't cross over that, but it still makes it, that you feel it's important that we withdraw or not, ban that box. I mean, and I think it can be done, just, and some of it's the technique of how, actually, is it, writing the resolution, or how it gets presented. And it would be something, we can talk about and see what's going to be the best way to present that, to actually write and present it, so.
My thinking is that we'd be more effective if we had something specific that we wanted to resolve, that that we were recommending, and that we ought to think about it a little bit more before we
Yeah.
jump in and make a resolution.
You know, and I would, you know, it would even, you know, it could be good to have, you know, a discussion with the attorney's office and get some of their input of what
Yes.
can and can't work. You know, express what you're trying to achieve, and then they can help, you know, they can help craft some of the message, which could be helpful, so.
Vivian, is this something you're interested in?
No, I don't think drafting resolutions or drafting charters is something that's really compatible with my job status and with my status here, so I don't think I can.
Okay.
It seems quasi-legislative in some sense, and since I work with the
In this
judiciary,
respect,
I'm
yeah.
comfortable with that.
Oh.
Okay,
It's a conflict of interest, yeah.
okay. Pam, are you interested in this?
What I would propose is coming up with some language consistent with what we historically do, and then submitting it to each of us and getting your input, and then coming up with some final document that maybe we could present to the city attorney, and, you know, just to ensure that we're not in conflict with something. And from there, then presenting it so that council can decide to act on it. Or so just coming up with some language that we can
Okay.
all review.
Would you like to take a first crack at that?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Okay. Anything else on the subject? Let me move on to candidate nominees for the task force for community policing. We have, at our February 28th meeting, we did most of the hard work on the subject. We have two things we want to add to that, and then we want to make a formal resolution to City Council giving our recommendations, even though City Council already, and Mayor already do have the recommendations that we've had, so, you know, to the state. Actually, they know where we're going, but we need a formal document. The City Council resolution says that we need to attach our recommendations to the mayor's resolution. And so I'm suggesting that we do all the work to fully document what we've done so far. So there are two things. One is that we have one more candidate, and it's a youth candidate. And I've passed out the application, and has everybody got a chance to look at it? This is candidate 27, I think. Any thoughts about this, or this is something that we wanted to include youth on this task force? And this gives us a chance to do it. And this person comes very highly recommended.
Does it, is there, I noticed that this person did not answer the question of whether they had reviewed Hillard Hines or the, you know, the reports that the HRC has had. Does that bother anyone? I mean, I assume since this is a youth candidate, you know, we'll sort of let it go.
This person is actually on a study group that is involved in this, and I don't know that there has been actual looking at this report.
Yeah.
But I know that police youth relations is a very important part of the study group that this person is on.
Great.
Anything else? Would anybody like to offer a motion to accept this person as part of our recommendations?
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The second issue has to do with a decision we made on February 28th meeting based on some incorrect information. And I think all of you have received a letter from David Baum explaining the misconception he had when he suggested that one of the candidates that he'd had an interaction with that person, and that person seemed to be difficult to work with. And afterwards, I think that David was concerned. He wanted to make sure that he had the right information, went back through all his emails for a long time, and found that indeed there were two people involved at the same time, and he had conflated them somehow, and the person who was difficult was not candidate 16. We all listened to his concern, and we had all rated candidate 16 very strongly, and because there was a concern from somebody that we knew that sounded believable, we asked that that person be submitted as an alternate rather than a regular. And David, who could not be here, asked me to make a motion that that person be recommended as a regular member to the mayor. And so I'm asking you, is that all right? When we do this document, we would take that person, the word alternate out and make it a regular member.
Yep.
So can we have any discussion? Motion to make that change.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Given that, I have a resolution. And I sent it to you. Have you had a chance to read it?
I have 2 notes.
Is there anything that you would like to change on it?
Yes, so I believe Lefies Gallimore's first name is misspelled. I think it's Le with an L-E, Fies, not L-A, Fies.
I think you're right. I will check, but I will
I checked it
make that change.
online in Lefies. Lefies Gallimore.
I don't have it with me, but I will make that change if that's, anything else?
I will also note that Anna Lemler has contacted me, and because she recently took a full-time job, she's still interested in being on the task force, but she's not interested in being chairperson of that task force anymore. So she just wants to be removed from consideration as a chairperson, but would still like to be considered for the task force.
Okay. Okay. Other changes? Doesn't sound like it. Does anybody want to make a motion to accept this resolution?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Good. I thought I had everybody. Okay.
Will this list of nominations be made public somehow, or?
Yes, I will make the corrections on the list, and I will give it to Heather, who will send it to the city council, put it in the city council's package, and I can send it out to everybody so that they can do what they want with it. Is that what you're asking? Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll do that tomorrow.
So at this point, do you know what will happen on Monday? Has the mayor prepared his own, has the mayor gone through these nominations by himself?
Yes.
And done his own cut, or?
I think that's true.
So he's made his own nominations?
Yes.
Without the benefit of seeing our nominations?
No, he's really seen these. After the meeting, we all agreed, we voted on the names. I said this is preliminary, and I also, when I knew that one might be changed, I also included that. I told him that at that point, we didn't have the youth.
Mm-hmm. Was he also told that the alternates changed as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, I've kept him informed, so that even though he didn't have the formal documentation, he's had everything for since the 29th.
So he's made his own,
29th.
he's
March
made his
1st.
own panel with our insight, but do you have any idea how much overlap there is, or?
I've been told that it's quite a bit. I do not know. I have not seen the list.
So what will be presented to City Council on Monday is the Human Rights Commission's panel of nominations and also the mayor's separate panel of nominations.
Yes. The mayor, I understand the mayor will present his resolution and with the names that he has chosen, and our nominations will be attached to his proposal. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's what I understood.
Do you know when his resolution might become available?
If it's passed,
Friday?
oh, yes, that's right, because it's in the package. Yeah, no, I looked, it wasn't up today. It wasn't up, and I looked this morning.
And because we didn't forward on, because we haven't made public who we rated as a medium candidate or a low candidate.
Right.
If, for example, the mayor's slate of nominations is half of our highly rated candidates and half of our low rated candidates, for example, there won't be any indication that we highly disfavored those candidates, right?
Certainly not in the mayor's and not in ours. We were only going to put the highly rated people.
I'm just saying that there were candidates that it seemed that there was consensus on wouldn't fit very well.
Yes.
Or that we didn't like quite as much as others. And if those are somehow on the mayor's nominations.
The mayor has that list.
The mayor has that list, but if
But-
the mayor disagrees with it and recommends people that we thought were,
Then
we
we-
almost
then we-
unanimously thought were lowly
It may
qualified.
look like we didn't vet them at all to everybody else.
But didn't we rank people as alternates and people we recommended?
Alternates were included.
Yeah,
And-
but it was named alternates,
Right.
right? So that is an indication for answer your question.
Yeah, but he could have gone off that list completely to people that we didn't even forward our names
Yeah,
on
but
to.
then residents will see, these are the top candidates that the Human Rights Commission
Right.
recommended. These were the alternates, but the mayor went ahead, if he does. He went off the list and picked his own. I mean, so you don't have to rank them medium, good, or low, but just the fact there are three categories, right? Our top rank, our alternates, and the people we didn't even pick is an indication where the recommendation stands in terms of how the Human Rights Commission looked at the appropriateness of these candidates in serving in this task force.
Yeah, I think that's true. Anything else about this? We will be able to find out on Friday. Next steps, I do not have very much on. I want to just briefly talk about where we're going to go from here, because soon we are not going to be talking about too much. I think we're going to be talking about some police issues for a while. The task force is going to run probably until about August, September, I don't know. But, for example, trespass questions, something we were interested in. I don't know about the rest of you. There are a couple of us were interested in it. Are you still interested in it because we're going to start?
Yes.
Okay. I think there's interest in it in the city attorney's office as well, and I will contact you all. HRC annual report, we put out an annual report every year. I started working on it, but it's not very far. I thought it was going to be a little bit further and you could see it, but you can't. But I will send it to you sometime this month to give you a start, and we'll deal with it at the next meeting. Also, the contractor annual report, Pam, where we've got to work on that as well.
Have we received the information from Colin?
Of course.
So that we can
No, but
commence that effort?
we will
Okay.
do that. Start thinking about other things that you want to be involved with, because we will in fact have, I hope, some time to spread out and do some things we've been wanting to do for a long time.
Leslie, are you going to be participating in the interviewing for the new police chief?
I have not been contacted, no.
They haven't set a process yet, and what they're going to look at doing is waiting until the commission gets in place before because they think, it's too important, and to hire a police chief before the commission's in place is out of sequence, and what the view is that it's going to be an important role for the commission to be part of that process once it's done, before that decision's made.
Do you anticipate that there will be an interim police chief?
Yes, there is.
And he's already been identified?
Yes, it's current,
Fairness.
Officer Fairness is stepping up and will be the interim in that timeframe. But Mr. Lazarus wanted to make sure that we don't put the cart before the horse, but then, this will be one of the things the policing commission, or whatever we call this, coming down the line, that it's generally in place, and then there's the ability to provide input, and even, I think, help be part of the process to hire a new chief. And the other concern was not, if you don't have the commission in place, we may not get the right candidates that we're looking for to be able to come in and interview. So, there's, if people ask, there's not going to be a process yet in place. But, things are on hold until we go through, until we kind of get the policing commission, at least the initial phase of it in place. I think with the chairman and however, come the September timeframe. So probably sometime, in the fall, early fall, will probably, that process will start for the new police chief. Don't quote me on a time frame, but the general intent is not to do it until the policing commission is in place.
I did actually, sorry to go back to the business, but going back to our task force nominations, I
Yes.
did want to mention that I spoke at the Ann Arbor Democrat meeting
Yes.
this past Saturday.
How did that
on
go?
a panel with Julie from Transforming Justice Washtenaw and also the mayor. And Julie and I both spoke about the importance of choosing a diverse panel, a qualified panel of candidates to serve on the task force. And I emphasized the fact that I really wanted to see the task force staffed with individuals who are civilians, who are members of this community, and are traditionally from over-policed communities in Ann Arbor. And the mayor responded that he was really respectful of our work and clearly had the same goals as us, and thought that we were on the same page. And so if we see a very different slate of candidates than the ones we've nominated, I would be very disappointed, because it seemed like the dialogue was something else
Yes.
this past Saturday, when we specifically mentioned how much work we had put into selecting a task force and how thoughtful we had been with our choices as well. So I would be upset if it turns out to be drastically different.
I've been told that it's not, but that you'll have to see for yourself, and I'll have to see for also. But relax for 2 days. We will talk about it, obviously, if it turns out that it's not.
There was one other comment that I wanted to just kind of put out there, just because it came up as the result of our deliberations and all of our efforts that went into identifying candidates for the task force. And I bring it up because it may present itself subsequently, especially once the list is published. But an email came into the HRC email from an applicant who wanted to know because we were very specific in speaking only of numbers.
We
But that
responded.
individual
Yeah.
wanted to know if the list of numbers would be published that coincides with the names.
No.
So I'm just bringing it up because it did come into,
Yeah, no, I saw it.
and the fact that it is
And I
foiable.
responded.
I know, because you did respond to it. But I believe what you have said in reference to Vivian's comments, that the information will be made public on Friday for the candidates that have been nominated, and that the mayor will then ultimately recommend as well. And I think it's important to note that that information is to be presented to city council, and they then will act on that information.
That's right.
So, individuals who applied, I think we were very careful. I know we worked very hard to say that we had excellent candidates. We had more than what we need. I think the term that we used several times was an embarrassment of riches. That still holds true, but it does not in any way preclude individuals who may have expressed interest in being on the task force from being considered for the commission,
Exactly.
once that is established and determined. But I want to make clear that the information will be made public for those that have been nominated. For those who were not selected, it is not an indication that they were not necessarily qualified or that they didn't present with skill sets that could be useful, but just that there were so many who did have excellent qualifications, and we felt that we wanted to recommend the absolute best, because Ann Arbor's not going to come in second to anyone.
And it's
And that's
best,
gonna-
and it's a specific mix we were also looking for.
Right.
So sometimes we had an awful lot of skill in one area, and we needed more, broadly in
Right.
different areas.
But I say that because I want it on record, because the question did come up. So anyone else who may be thinking, I want to know what my number is, we're not going to provide that information. The information we're going to provide is what's necessary to move this process forward.
Okay. So I think we're at Commissioner Communications. Any thoughts about this meeting before we adjourn? Good. Can we have an emotion to adjourn?
To adjourn.
May I ask you, these are not gifts, they are resources. And because I didn't know you, I will give you yours without your name. But thank you for joining this commission.
Thank you. Thank you. Motion to
I'll
adjourn?
move to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.